All right, okay, good evening, everyone. Okay, so welcome to today's live stream. So as usual, okay, we'll run through the sessions over here, and see you guys have any questions. We'll take those questions as we progress as well. Good. So as usual, I'll start off with the dollar index. Run through some of the trade setups that we're looking at, as well as upcoming opportunities to keep an eye on, and yeah, we'll take it from there. Okay, so let's start off with the dollar index. Overall, last week has been generally a little bit slower. You can see that the dollar index overall didn't really move much. Going into this week here, we're kind of expecting the pullback. So of course, if you're kind of looking at some kind of a short-term pullback trade, right? That would open up an opportunity for us to look for the pullback on the dollar this week. Okay, so this is generally looking corrective in nature. Okay, and this pattern structure you can see impulsive drop. Ignore the week. We do have some sort of a crawl structure here. So oftentimes when we see this combination, we can expect some sort of a pullback. Okay. And simply because this is a first push down, right? What we can then also expect is a simple tree wave, right? So that's where the expectation starts to build in, where we have this one, two, three completed. We have this first move down. This first move here, of course, as I mentioned, a combination of the crawl. So we expect to pull back here as a second wave, and then we expect one more drop to kind of complete that third wave, right? So once we have this in confluence with the previous low as well, then we might see the dollar strengthen back up eventually. Okay, but again, coming back to this week's wrap, essentially we're looking at this as a pullback, and then short term we can look for the buy, and then if price were to come back to this kind of level, we'll look at opportunities to then sell it. Okay, so going into euro dollar over here on the forward time frame, that's the expectation, right? So kind of inverse on that. We do see the crawl structure here. Of course, this is the momentum push crawl structure, so we expect this drop and then the next push up. All right, so kind of like just the opposite of the dollar index. Um, at the same time, there's also the possibility where uh, this can be your one, two, three, four, and then push back up here as well, breaking that. So I'm also open to, in a way, understand that that can happen. Right. So of course we do have a sell trade active right now if you're following the setups, right? We do have that sell trade right now in the euro dollar as well. Personally, I have shift stops to break even, something that you can consider doing as well, just to remove the risk on the trade, and then if price just continue to move in our favor, then that's great. But if it decides to just bounce up from here, then at least it's a risk-free trade, right? But general expectation as of now, right, it's that this would likely come back towards the area here at 15618. So very, very quickly, just to show you the setup that we have, right? Right, so this is the setup here. This was actually a setup from last Friday, right? The trade got tagged in last Friday. Um, we went into a little bit of a drawdown, and then this session here today, this week, that's where we get that drop. Um, and I decided to just shift stocks to break even. A little bit aggressive in shifting. Okay. But again, as I explained, right, on a high time frame, there's a possibility that this can go higher still. And that's the part where I just want to be a little bit more aggressive in protecting the downside. Okay. And also, of course, the context of this trade, right? Essentially, we are trading the pullback, right? So when I'm trading a pullback, usually I tend to a little bit more aggressive in a way to protect the risk. Um, because I understand that we're not technically trading, in line with the overall direction. Okay, so that's something to note as well that you can consider. Right. Another thing on this particular trade is, of course, you can see if we are sticking to our typical setup, right? The target would just be at that recent swing low, which is going to give you close to like 1:2 You can see here is about 1 is to 1.87, 1.9 because the entry I actually put it a little bit lower by 2 pips, and because it's not a very wide stop, right? It's just about 30 plus pips. So every pip contribute to the ratio quite significantly, right? But having said that, if you're gonna target just here, I mean, 1.8 versus to ratio is not a bad thing. Alternatively, what you can also look out for is extended target range. So on the high time frame, we expect this to actually pull back towards that 1.1560, 1.1520, which also nicely confluence with where this swing low is. So that can ease up as a liquidity, then the next bounce up, right? So that's something you can also consider going for extended, right? Which means if you aim for 1.1560, um, that would put you a very nice risk to reward ratio of 3.8, right? I mean, if you go lower towards where that previous swing low is, it can extend to 1 to 5. Um, so really, there is that huge opportunity that you can look into. Of course, you will probably just trail your profits, trail your stops accordingly as price continue to move, right? Yeah, so this is on euro dollar, right? Pretty straightforward. Hey, so that's on euro. If you go over to the pound, higher time frame expectation more or less the same. We are expecting the pullback. Okay, we are expecting the pullback. So this week's focus on the pound here would be more of can we get the pullback trade? Okay. Um, if I were to bring you to the lower time frame on the pound, technically right now we don't have a obvious setup. Okay. However, if we can get a nice impulsive break below that low, something sort of this push lower, um, then the corrective pullback would give us the opportunity to sell, right? Ideally, we're going to get this as an impulsive look as well that gives us some sort of a market imbalance. Then we can start to look for the retracement sell trade, right? Um, that's something to look out for GBP USD, right? But for now, it's a little bit too early to kind of conclude that we're going to get that set up, okay? So just going to keep it as of now, just like that, okay? Then we have Aussie. Okay, Aussie is also building up pretty nicely for a potential trade. So if you look at the higher time frame, we are expecting a simple move to the downside to complete a three-wave development. Right? So internally, what we're seeing here is that this is very, very corrective as well, and we get this impulsive push. So naturally, the expectation is for price to continue lower to complete this 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this one we are looking at sell trade setups. If you go down to the lower time frame, there is that setup that we're looking at as well. Not the perfect setup in a way. Uh, this low wasn't really taken out. However, I'm still comfortable with this because we do have this liquidity sweat. We have, this low taken, this low taken. We have that momentum push. This looks pretty corrective in nature. Okay, so overall, I'm just being comfortable taking this trade, right? Of course, that also kind of aligns with the high time frame context of things. So that's on the Aussie, pretty straightforward, right? I would say, right? So as long as price remains below this invalidation level, we're gonna expect continuation to the downside to complete the three-wave move, right? And next up we have the dollar Canadian. Pretty straightforward as well, I would say. So this one here, we are looking at the expectation of a simple tree wave, right? So we have this completed, we have this impulsive lake. This looks corrective as of now. So as long as price respects high, we can expect one more drop. Okay. Then that would complete that tree wave, and from there, this can actually pop back up. So we do have a setup as well. Price came pretty close to the entry point as of last week. See, that's our entry point. Okay. We didn't really tag it. Price seems to be starting to move lower. I'm not going to chase into this. If we don't get tag in on our entry, then I'll just, let this go anyway. The reason is because we do have dollar related trades already in that particular direction, right? We are selling the dollar yen. We'll talk a little bit in a while. We also have the euro dollar trade that's currently running. Both of these are risk free, but they are dollar related, right? So um, even if I miss out on dollar cat, I'm perfectly fine with that because I don't want to be overly exposed on the dollar, right? In a way. But of course, if this were to push back up and tag us in, then that would be great as well because everything kind of check out for dollar Canadian. Okay, so that's the idea for this pair. Then, yeah, moving into dollar yen. Now dollar yen on a higher time frame, right? Again, why I play around with two time frames is because it sometimes provide some context and understanding what can potentially develop, and that help us to manage our expectation on the trades as well. So if you take a look at the 4 hour, right, from this swing high, what we have is the market came down. Yes, it does develop this corrective pullback, and then it has another pop down. Taking out this low, but you can see that it did not really continue moving lower, right? The pop back up is pretty impulsive. That's where we kind of got tagged in as well, which to be honest wasn't the best kind of entry reaction that we want because we obviously don't want price to come back into our entry zone impulsively, right? Um, but then after that, the market came back down, giving us that opportunity to shift stops to break even, which is great, right? Um, so if you take a look at how price is developing from here, okay, it puts the perspective where there's a possibility this would go back and take out this high, right? So from any wave understanding or any wave pattern development itself, we can then see that there's a good possibility this can turn into what we know as an expanding flat before another draw. Okay. So that's where the higher time frame gives us the understanding, the context, while we are actually taking a trade on a lower time frame. Okay, so this is the setup you can see on the lower time frame. Okay. Um, to be honest, there's a good possibility this would probably just come back at taggers at break even. If you have trailed your stops a little bit more, getting out at kind of like if you get out somewhere here with your trail, you probably get out at like 0.75. I think that's perfectly fine. Hey, a profit is still a profit. Better than giving away everything or even from a winning trade ended up to a losing trade, right? Um, so that's my view on the dollar yen right now. Okay, so the expectation is not going to be very high on this. There's a good possibility we'll just break even. Um, and then what I'll look out for is as price continue to develop back to this high, right? So that's where the high time frame can cover that. There's a good possibility this will break. If we break that high and we develop another setup that we can look to sell from there, I'll be very happy to get involved in the sell trade again. Okay, so that's the view on dollar yen. But of course, what can happen here is the market can just take it down. That's very, very possible as well. Okay, so we'll see. That's the update on dollar yen. Okay. Of course, both trades are already risk free, so not too much of a concern, right? The worst case scenario is you're just not going to be making money of it, but you're just going to end up break even. Okay. Um, then we have gold. Okay. Gold is interesting because there is a good opportunity to consider a pretty aggressive buy as a pullback trade, right? So if you look at this scale here, the expectation is this is the move, this is the pullback, this is the sell, okay? Which is kind of similar to the dollar cat, right? There's some similarity in that. You can see this push down, pullback, sell, right? Three-way move, push down, pullback, sell, right? And then on top of that, we have the Aussie dollar kind of structure here as well, combined with a little bit of like euro dollar perspective of the crawl. So you can see patterns tends to repeat itself, right? You have this crawl here, this push down. If this is going to be corrective in nature, we can expect downside. Okay. So that's the general overall expectation I have on gold. Okay, which um, I would say a bit more conservative in looking at setups would be to wait for price to take out this high, right? Again, that will give you the expanding structure, and then you look for sell setup around at 618. The alternative view here, if you're a little bit more aggressive, which I kind of spotted, again, you can see this is the setup, right, which is more conservative. Um, the other more aggressive kind of setup here is, let me just clean up everything, right? Is this, okay? So you can see that we have taken out this low, okay? So that would then serve as a liquidity. Price then reverse with certain momentum, taking out that minor high, right? So that would serve as a change in character. And in the process of moving back up, you can see that we do have some momentum, right? Where the market leaves behind the fair gap. Okay. So from here, if you start to put in some fits, right, from swing low to swing high, you can see that nice little confluence as well, right, where the 67 is with the fair gap, right? So this is it's kind of a valid setup where it builds into the possibility of something like that, right? And of course, you can't confluence it with overall. Again, the high time frame perspective, we were looking at a sell, right? Then this would be the potential short-term pullback buy trade you can look out for as a target. Okay. The thing about this buy setup is a little bit aggressive. It's valid, everything is there, the conditions are there, the context is also there. It's just that you need to understand that this is trading the inner pullback, right? It's not the pullback of the higher time frame, but it's really a shorter time frame kind of pullback. So again, trying to review this ideas here. You need to make a decision if this is kind of aligned with the style, aligned with your trade plan, whether this is something you're comfortable in taking. Okay. But yeah, right. So that's something you can look into for gold. Um, whether you're comfortable in taking that, really short-term buy. If not, then my suggestion is just wait for this correction to happen. Look for the sell and stay. Okay. So that's on gold. Again, this week there are a couple of things that it's worth noting. Okay. I think last week we covered that too, right? I can mention. Uh, because we're not looking at intraday, we're not looking at very short term. There are cycles in the market where after an impulsive move, where we had the NFP at the start of the month, we get some impulsive move. Usually you need to be patient, right? And then you realize that after NFP, there was a week where literally the things is just so quiet, right? Market is in the range. And then going into like late last week, early this week, which is now, you start to see more opportunities build up, right? So that's typically how, if you're looking at swing trades, right? That's how the cycle works. Okay, so that's on gold. If you go over to silver, we do have something that we are looking out for. Uh, but right now, I'll be patient a little bit, okay? Because there are a couple of possibilities of how this can play out in terms of the pattern. And I would love to see more confirmation before committing to anything, right? So silver here, um, let me walk you through the thought process. Say, we do have this as a high that's taken out, and then we had this momentum push down. We did have price pulls back reacting after 618, but again, this is a one leg pullback. Okay, if the market did a three swing pullback, that's a totally different perspective, right? Because if that's a true wave pullback, then I'm a little bit more comfortable in this sell. But the course, it's not a three wave pullback. it's just a one leg pullback, um, I'm a little bit cautious in selling, right? And what will give me the extra confirmation is if price can take out the swing low, right? So meaning if price comes down here, take out the swing low, uh, then yeah, would be more comfortable in concluding that this is all it is. Can start to look for the third leg down, right? Um, if it's not, then we'll just need to be patient. Perhaps this will go a little bit higher, builds into something like that, then the first leg down, right? Then again, we'll look to sell from there. Okay. So that's my thought process, right? And again, it's not every other setup. We just take it, right? We always start from the perspective: do I get a clear pattern, a clear direction that I can work on? Then only we go down to the setup phase and combining the element of context and things. Okay, so that's on silver. I think right now you probably just want to give it some time and see how things are going to develop moving forward. Good. Hopefully that's clear. Then moving into crude oil. Crude oil here, pretty straightforward, right? I think you can see the momentum is here to the downside, but of course, price is starting to lose its momentum, and there's a good possibility we'll start to see that deeper pullback develop eventually. We might get an opportunity to buy this up, but again, we want to see a first sign of a reversal, which is an impulsive push. Okay, if price can take this high and make a move impulsively to the upside, then we have this as a liquidity shift. This is a change corrector. The pullback will give us the buy setup. Right. So again, just be patient from now. Okay. So that's on crude oil, and then we have S&P expecting that pullback. We might have something, but again, really depends on how price is going to develop moving forward here. You have some minor break here. If price can take out this swing low with momentum, following a corrected pullback, then short term we can look to sell this as a three wave 1 2 3, right? Then after which look to buy again. Yeah, but this would probably not be. I mean, this would probably be something that would develop maybe closer towards the end of the week. Right, so we're just gonna keep monitoring on that. Pound yen, nothing much as of now. I think the market is going into some sort of a consolidation. Okay, so there's really nothing much that is worth noting on the pound yen now. But if we can get some sort of a corrective pullback towards the zone, that will give us a decent buy setup. Okay, but it's gonna take time, so probably don't want too much emphasis on that right now. Um, Aussie yen, not the best structure as well. Okay, so again, just to share a little bit on like why I would jump to that conclusion, so you guys can understand the thought process. So initially we saw this, right? And then we saw this push up. I did share, as of like last week as well, if I recall correctly, this move is not really impulsive in nature. Yes, it's going up, but you can see how the candles are developing. There's no clear momentum, right? So that's something that you want to be cautious as well. I mean, if the market is moving in one direction, but it doesn't carry momentum, it's telling you that though it's not going up with conviction, right? If the market is not going up with conviction, then why should you be so comfortable or so confident in buying it, right? You then be less comfortable and less confident as well. If the market is showing you signs of commitment, right, signs that it's going up decisively, then yes, right, you will be also very, very convicted in the upside potential. Okay, so that's the whole logic. So if you take a look at Aussie here, you can see that the move up is not very, very impulsive. Um, and then we get this like impulsive drop, right? You can see the momentum is there, candle body is very, very obvious. Uh, yeah, so when I see things like that, um, I wouldn't be too eager to just jump in and say, all right, we're gonna look to the upside, right? Even though this can potentially develop into a three wave. The reason is because what can happen over here is this can develop into something like that. Okay. And then only that push up. So when the market isn't showing a very obvious pattern structure or isn't very obvious momentum or what we call directional bias, that's often where I would say, let's take a step back, give it time, just be patient on it. Okay, so this is the classic case of Aussie yen, right? I mean, if you recall, pound odd, we have been being patient with it for quite a bit of time, right? Especially when the market is in this phase where it's just consolidation is in the range. And then we get a break, right? And you can see that this break is with momentum. Okay, so we are shifting towards being bullish, but again, we want to see the pullback. Okay, because you don't want to be buying at the top. You always want to wait for the market to pull back, buy at a retracement to increase your risk to reward ratio. Okay, so yeah, pound off pretty straightforward. We just see if we can get a corrective pullback. If we do, we might get a setup to look into the upside. Okay, then moving to BTC. Again, another very good like food for thought, right? Or I would say a good example to reinforce the part where you don't want to be buying just because the market made a move up, right? Just a refresher for some of you who have been, listening to some of the sharings that I did like in the past. Okay, for those of you who are first time or like pre-new here, I can't always share. When we get an impulsive move to the upside or even to the downside, you don't want to be executing trades near the top or the bottom, right? Because after an impulsive move, there's a high probability the market will do either one of these two things, right? One is a pullback, or two is a reversal, right? So case in point, you can see this is a push up, you get a pullback. This is a push up, you get a potential reversal, right? So if you're buying at the top, right, which is after the impulsive move and you decide to jump into the trade, oftentimes it's not going to be the best spot to enter. Okay, because if the market is going to pull back, you're going to get into a drawn up. The market is going to reverse, you are in the wrong direction. So the thing here is always wait and let the market develop the next move to tell you whether is it likely going to be a continuation or is it going to likely be a reversal. So case in point, right? You can see this is a push up, but then the market kind of reverses very sharply, right? So it's kind of V shape. So this is indicating more of a reversal than a pullback, okay? Which means that there's a good possibility the market will come back lower after a corrective move. The market may take up the swing low, right? But of course, does it mean that you're going to sell here? No, right? Why again? Because it's the same thing. The market came down impulsively. You don't want to be executing any trade at the bottom. If this is likely going to continue to downside, it will need to first give you that clue by developing a corrective state to say that there's a high probability this will come back down and maybe retest the low, right? Then that can be an opportunity to sell. Okay, so again, if you see an impulsive move, don't just jump into the trade from there on. Okay, so that's on BTC. Again, nothing much that you can look into taking trades as of now, but that's the outlook for Bitcoin. Okay. So if you take a look on the right-hand side here, there are a couple of things that I've tagged, right, with the red flag. Essentially, those are the things that I think it's worth noting. Okay, and in fact, two of the trades that we are currently holding on to is dollar yen and euro dollar, which again, this would very likely just be a break-even trade, and euro dollar would ideally, start moving lower with momentum, and that would give us a nice little potential, depending on where you're going to target, 1 to 2. Um, the most conservative one will give you about 1 to 1.8. Okay? If you go for all the way back down, can you really extend that to 1 to 5? Okay? Yeah, so I hope that's clear. I do see here Marvin asked about gold and Aussie, but I think we did manage to cover that as I'm running through the list as well. Okay, yeah, Irene, good evening here as well. Okay, so hopefully it's clear in terms of like what to look up for this week, what are some of the opportunities available. Okay, and yeah, we'll see how the markets are going to develop for the week. As usual, I'm keeping you guys updated on a daily basis as well, right? And if there's any setups that building up, I'll put it down as well for your reference. Good. So, yep, that's all from me for today. If I don't see any other further questions, right? So that's all the best. See you guys again next week. Hey, good night.